Hi there, Lindsay here, the Frugal Crafter. I was playing around with these paints last night and I did this little rose and I thought it came out so pretty that I would do a quick tutorial for you today. So I'm going to start off with a piece of handmade watercolor paper. It's nice and rough and I think it just makes kind of student grade watercolors look really pretty because of the texture the paper has. And all you're really going to need is a large water brush for this. This is, I would say, an equivalent to like a 6 or an 8 brush, so you could use that if you don't have a water brush. But it's handy because a lot of times kits like this come with a water brush, and this is a Royal & Langnickel kit of watercolors. I'm going to start off by making my rose somewhat off center. I'm going to pick up some crimson red and I am just going to load up my brush just by dragging it across so I keep a nice tip on the brush. Then using my brush straight up and down, I am going to do some little circles, kind of concentric circles like that. Okay, and then I'm going to make them a little bit wider as I come out. So I just have these little slices of kind of light in between. Now I'm going to squeeze out some of that paint on my palette so I can have a diluted mix. And then I am going to make some wider strokes. Now it's a little bit easier, I think, to squeeze the water out onto the palette and pull them that way, because that way you're not trying to deal with the flow of water from your water brush as you are painting. So you're just kind of doing these slightly curved strokes around, and each stroke is kind of representing another petal. Get a little bit of yellow in there, so you get kind of like a peach color, and you can add that to the outside. And you can make it as large as you want to. Now I want to go in with a little bit more color. I'm just dabbing my brush off on a rag that's off to the side there. And I'm going to go in and add, now keep in mind it's going to dry a little bit lighter, add a little bit of color into some of those shapes there. But you do want to be pretty light-handed. And it's probably going to look like a big mess before you're done, so keep that in mind and don't get discouraged. Just go real light with your colors, especially reds, which can be very, very strong and difficult to temper. And you can always go in and put more after it dries, but I like to get the majority of the work done right off the bat. I'm going to try to soak up some of that extra water just by blotting my brush off and kind of setting in the puddle. I'm working on a little bit of an incline because I find that it's a little bit, it helps a little bit. I feel like I need a little bit more of the darker color down the edge on this bottom side, just to kind of weigh it down a little bit. Okay, now we're going to do a couple little rosebuds. And I'm going to just kind of press my brush and lift and get this kind of like little apostrophe. We'll do a couple of those. And we could do one over here. I think things look nice in 3s or odd numbers. And I'm going to wipe my brush, and we're going to go for some green, but we're going to mix our green. We're going to use some yellow, because we used that yellow in our flower, and we're going to grab a little bit of Prussian blue. We're going to do a little ball at the bottom of each of these buds. It can be a little tricky on this really textured paper. I'm just going to bring the stem back. And you can bring some leaves up if you want. You can switch to a smaller brush if you want to for that. And now we're going to do just some leaves around the face of the flower, again with this big brush. I'm going to stick with that green that I mixed, plus I'm going to add a little bit more Prussian blue. I'm going to add a little bit of this cerulean. And let's see what that looks like. It's going to be pretty. Maybe a little bit more Prussian blue. There we go. I think it's going to be pretty. I am going to kind of press up near the edge. Now if it bleeds into the flower at all, I think that actually looks kind of pretty, so don't fret. And I'm doing a couple little strokes to make my petals, and I'm leaving a little slice of the white of the paper. For a shadow, I'll grab a little bit more Prussian blue and add that kind of close to the flower. And I think I'll do another one right next door. Put a couple up here too. Make this one a little bit bigger. I try to vary the scale a little bit and just try to make things balance out as I work. Maybe add a little bit more yellow. And do another one right here. Okay, I think I might put a little bit of a stem. Add a little bit more of that cerulean blue into that one. Trying to drop the color, and it doesn't like to flow too much on this paper because the paper is so textured. If you see like, oh, I just got too much of that same color green in there, go in and add some blue to it. Make it work for you. Now I'm going to grab some burnt, I think I'll take burnt umber. Add a little bit of red to it. Oops, that's burnt sienna. I'll do burnt umber there. Got to make sure you have enough water in there so that it will flow off your brush. And I'm thinking about, okay, we got stems coming down from the buds, we got stems from the rose, we got stems from the flowers, and then I'm gonna add a grouping of leaves from this main stalk, and I'm also gonna throw in some. I will take a little burnt sienna. Actually, that's a little bit warmer. I like that. And add some thorns. Okay, so for the, now that we've had some practice with those leaves, we're going to do one more leaf. Let's do another leaf right over here. This time I'll show you another technique. This one we're going to go in with just, well, it's not clear water because I didn't clean my brush very well, but let's just say it's clear water, but you can actually see what I've done because my brush was a little dirty. So let's say that's clear water, then go in and grab your color. Whoops. There is a green in this grouping, but we haven't used that color, so I didn't want to go in and grab that at this point. And then you can go in and just add your color and just let it flow. I think that gives you a really pretty effect too, and you can kind of define the edges of your petals if your petals are dry too, which is kind of neat. Sometimes you do these skinny little leaves right up against the flower too. This should be a little bit more blue, I think. Let's get a little more yellow in there. Alright, before I put any more any more leaves in, I want to get the leaves off of this stem. I'm going to start with an oval shape. You can leave that center vein space, but I forgot to. I'm actually just going to kind of sketch in a few of these shapes. Now they tend to mirror each other on each side of the vein, on each side of the flower. I'm just kind of doing this with a really watered down paint just so I can space it out a little bit. And there would be one back there, but we won't be able to see it too well. Okay, now I'm going to put in a little bit more moisture and mix up a little bit more green. Why do I always go for the blue first? I should do the yellow first so I can kind of clean it off as I go in there. I'll do that. Let's clean it off now. Okay, we can throw in those colors. Throw in a little bit of that blue. Now something that's kind of pretty with rose leaves, especially ones that kind of grow out off of a stem like that, is that they get this really pretty red edging. And so I'm just gonna very, very gently outline, but outline with a serration. So I've got the shape of the serrated leaves because they have that little bit of a toothy leaf to them. And it doesn't have to be all the way around because you don't want it to just look like it's outlined. You can also throw it. It's important you don't get a lot of water on this when you're doing the red. You can also put your vein in with that too, and it just gives you a little bit of flair. Now something else I want to put in is kind of a decorative vine, and I'm going to use the phthalo blue, or Prussian blue rather, some of this cerulean blue, quite a bit of water, a little bit of the green. Let's see, yeah, that's about what I want. And just trying to think, how do I want to curve it around? I want it to go the whole length. I think I want maybe a couple vines, so I think I'll do one this way, and I'll do one this way, maybe another little one going that way. And what you're going to do is find a spot that's convenient or comfortable to start from, and you're going to start on the tip of your brush. So your brush is going to be straight up and down, but I'm going to try to hold it to an angle so you can see like that. Okay, so you just tip of your brush, you pull off your petal, then you press your brush down, and then you're going to lift it up again. You're going to make a little leaf. Now if you want it fatter, you can always go back in and you can round it out a little bit, but you will be able to do this in one go. So I'm going to actually try to put this at a different angle so that you'll be able to see a little bit better. So I'm going to push and lift. Okay, so you just want to kind of get like a tapered leaf. And you can go right off the edge of the paper if you want to. So this is the tip, so it's going to, the leaves get smaller towards the end of your vine. So I would start kind of with the bigger ones, and feel free to move so that you're comfortable as you're going around. It's almost like you're making a little fern. And I would try to stick with the same brush the whole time so that way they look consistent. You might need to fill in if you're not able to start right on the tip of your brush. You might need to go in and fill in a little bit. That's fine. If you have any that are kind of flat on one side, you can go in and fill those in as well. I think that's a real pretty effect. And you can just kind of fill in as you need to. Like down here, you don't have really room to pull a full stroke there, so you can just kind of fill in. If your brush runs dry, just go back in and fill in afterwards. And this is a great way you can actually cover up mistakes if you end up with like empty spaces, or you had a blob somewhere you didn't want it. You can go in and add one of these vines. It works out really well. Turn your paper so that you're comfortable, but you will get better at approaching this from different angles too. These are kind of like filler vines. And it just makes kind of a fun pattern. So one more thing that I want to do here is maybe add a little bit of background. So I'm just going to move my palette back down so you can see it. There we go. Going to squeeze, going to clean up my brush a little bit. Actually, I'm just going to go in with a different color because I'm going to yellow, and that's quite a change. I'm going to clean that off a little bit. And then I'm going to just go in and add a little bit of background. You don't have to do this, but I did in my example, and I really liked it. So I thought, what the heck, if you don't like it, then you don't have to do it. But since we did use some yellow in the, we use this color making a green, we use this color in our petals, I thought it'd be pretty just to integrate a little bit here and there. You don't have to be perfect. In fact, I think that it not being perfect looks a little bit better because it, it makes it look kind of fresh and loose. And this is a loose style. Actually, put a little bit of yellow in the center of the flower if you want to. Kind of fill in. Helps define the edge of the flower too. If your petals got really light on the outside, that will help you give a little definition, which is nice. And if this is actually because the this paper doesn't have a lot of sizing, you can actually go over these vines. I wouldn't do any place where you had really thick paint, but where you had it pretty watery like the vines, and that paint would absorb into the paper a little better. You can actually go right over the vines with the yellow. And because the yellow was an ingredient in that color, it shouldn't bother anything, even if it does make it smudge a little bit. But I find that once that layer underneath, if it dries, it's pretty much staying put because there's not a lot of sizing in this paper. Now the next step is completely optional, but it's something I enjoy doing, and that is spattering. And I'm going to go back to this bigger brush just because it will give me a better spatter. And I'm going to grab some of that cerulean blue. Like some nice juicy cerulean blue paint here. And just, oh, I guess I don't have it. Just do a little bit of spattering there. And you can blot any spatters that you don't want. I just think it gives it a little texture, helps it look a little loose. And then if you do want to do anything else into the flower, you can. You can take some more red. I know I said we're just going to use one brush, but the other brushes are pretty dirty, so I'm going to go in with this one. If you see some, like, a lot of times, like, when it dries, you start to see where the petals would be, like, where the individual petals would happen. And you don't have to define them, but sometimes it's nice to give them a little bit of definition. Because sometimes it's not really that apparent when you first paint it. It's like, I wonder what petal is there. You know, it'll just look kind of sloppy. And that just gives you a chance to sharpen things up a little bit if you want to. I usually don't like to squirt over my paper. I'll squirt my brush if I need water over my palette, so I don't end up with a big blob, because sometimes that will happen. You'll get more, you'll squeeze it a little harder than you intended, and you'll get a blob. All right. Well, there you have it. I hope you enjoyed this. Play around with the idea. I think it's a lot of fun, and these make really great postcards to send to family and friends. Thanks for watching. Please give me a thumbs up if you liked it. Until next time, happy crafting.